Even before I went to the UN, I often would want to say something in a meeting, only women at the table, and I'd think, okay, well, I don't think I'll say that. It may sound stupid. And then some man says it, and everybody thinks it's completely brilliant, and you are so mad at yourself for not saying something. I have had fun being who I became, so to speak. Hate, emotionalism, and frustration are not policies. I know that war is very cruel and that life is harder when you aren't able to live in the place you called home. Women have to be active listeners and interrupters, but when you interrupt, you have to know what you are talking about. If you look at U.S. history through religious history, there is very much a motif that shows the importance religion has played in the U.S. We're a very religious country and it affects the way we look at various political issues. It's one thing to be religious, but it's another thing to make religion your policy. I think that we all know what evil is. We have a sense of what's evil, and certainly killing innocent people is evil. We're less sure about what is good. There's sort of good, good enough, could be better, but absolute good is a little harder to define. I loved being Secretary of State, that's probably evident to everyone who watched me. The difference between humans and other mammals is that we know how to accessorize. I'm a problem solver. I think that a president needs to have a variety of views presented. But also, there has to be a team effort, because otherwise, I think it creates a dissonance and difficulty. I've never seen America as an imperialist or colonialist or meddling country. The capability of negotiating is something that means you not only have to understand fully what you believe and what your national interests are, but in order to be a really good negotiator, you have to try to figure out what the other person on the other side of the table has in mind. NATO has been a thread throughout my life. I think women want to take care of themselves, and I think having a voice in how that is done is very important. So people are talking about revolution. What a revolution it would be to have a woman president. Take it from someone who fled the Iron Curtain. I know what happens when you give the Russians a green light. I was a little girl in World War II and I'm used to being freed by Americans. And so I have studied, I have to tell you, revolutions and uprisings for a long time. They are all slightly different, but what they all look for is some kind of a mechanism to go from an authoritarian system to an open, democratic system. My mindset is Munich. Most of my generation's is Vietnam. If we have to use force, it is because we are America. We are the indispensable nation. We stand tall. We see further into the future. Saddam's goal is to achieve the lifting of UN sanctions while retaining and enhancing Iraq's weapons of mass destruction programs. We cannot, we must not, and we will not let him succeed. What a blast it is to be here with Michael Moore. No matter how hard we might wish, we will not be able to transform China's behavior overnight. I believe that my parents did wonderful things for us. I didn't want to set up a women's studies program. I thought women should learn to operate in a coeducational atmosphere, because, especially in national security and international affairs, it's male-dominated. And so I think that the idea of America working with other countries to solve problems is good for us, and it is part of digging us out of the my way or the highway approach that was evident in the previous 8 years. This is pure speculation, but for a period of time, a lot of getting into a party was through fundraising and volunteer work, and Republican women had more time to do that than Democratic women, who were out there getting jobs. I loved what I did. I could have been Secretary of State forever. I think that there is never an indispensable leader, you know? I think that there is a time with dignity that one needs to leave. I think the personal relationships I established mattered in terms of what I was able to get done. And I did bring women's issues to the center of our foreign policy. I really think that there was a great advantage in many ways to being a woman. I think we are a lot better at personal relationships, and then have the capability obviously of telling it like it is when it's necessary. Well, I do think, when there are more women, that the tone of the conversation changes, and also the goals of the conversation change. But it doesn't mean that the whole world would be a lot better if it were totally run by women. If you think that, you've forgotten high school. Maybe if everybody in leadership was a woman, you might not get into the conflicts in the first place. But if you watch the women who have made it to the top, they haven't exactly been non-aggressive, including me. What people have the capacity to choose, they have the ability to change. I have always thought of myself as a Czechoslovak Catholic. My parents were of the generation who thought they were the children of a free Czechoslovakia, the only democracy in Central Europe. I was taught to strive not because there were any guarantees of success but because the act of striving is in itself the only way to keep faith with life. I think I've revived the costume jewelry industry. I am often asked if, when I was secretary, I had problems with foreign men. That is not who I had problems with, because I arrived in a very large plane that said United States of America. I had more problems with the men in our own government. It's important that we invest in America, literally. The terrorists wanted to destroy our economy, and we can't let our system fall apart. We also have to invest in one another. As strong as the United States is, we can't deal with terrorism alone. For somebody who loves foreign policy, being secretary is the best job in the world, but it doesn't happen twice. For me, being raised in a free America made all the difference. I enjoy wearing pins, and nobody tells me to do it. To be safe at the expense of the liberty of other people is a difficult equation. The greatest thrill in my life was to represent the United States of America. I have always seen the United States as a force of good. And I have learned that there is the idealistic part about what we can do at the UN and there is a doable part. And I have learned what is more doable. Don't make me into this airy-fairy, moralist, idealist because I'm not. Really, I have to laugh because there was a whole set of stories that made me sound like the Dragon Lady, you know, tough this and tough that. Then there is this business about go away. The bottom line is I am a pragmatic idealist. I also think it is important for women to help one another. I have a saying, there is a special place in hell for women who don't. I wasn't a normal professor. I had worked in government. I hadn't written 9 zillion books. I was a hands-on professor. I am such a political person. I do not believe that things happen accidentally, I believe you earn them. The main thing is to remain oneself, under any circumstances, that was and is our common purpose. For me, America is really, truly the indispensable nation. There is a special place in hell for women who do not help other women. When Hillary was First Lady, we went to the Beijing Women's Conference. She courageously stood up and spoke out on behalf of human rights and women's rights, inspiring millions to fight for a better future. History would be far different if we did not tend to hear God most clearly when we think He is telling us exactly what it is we want to hear. The more extreme advocates from one side help to validate the arguments of extremists on the other. And frankly, I don't understand. I mean, I'm obviously a card-carrying Democrat, but I can't understand why any woman would want to vote for Mitt Romney, except maybe Mrs. Romney. Disgusting Serbs, get out. When Hillary served in the Senate, I saw her work day and night as a member of the Armed Services Committee, working with Republicans and Democrats to keep our military strong and protect our troops and their families.